Thank you, I appreciate that. And I want to congratulate Bill again. It's really quite beautiful. Well, I was going to welcome you here on this bright and sunny day. It's still sunny in a way, but it's a gray and rainy day and beautiful in its own way. The film that we're going to see today, as you all know, is Daisy Kenyon, which was released in 1947 and which was directed by Otto Preminger. The movie stars Joan Crawford, Dana Andrews, Henry Fonda,
What a cast.
Ruth Warwick, child star Peggy Ann Garner, and also an actress billed as Martha Stewart. It's not our Martha Stewart of today, but it was an earlier time, and she's pretty good in it. This film was shot by one of Hollywood's great cinematographers, Leon Shamroy, and I think it's going to be a visual treat for you. Now, Daisy Kenyon originated as a novel that was published in 1945 and was written by Elizabeth Janaway. Joan Crawford read the novel, and she wanted to acquire the film rights. But 20th Century Fox beat her to it. They got the rights to the novel and set out to produce it. They were in pre-production. Otto Preminger was the director, and there were various names that came up of actresses to play Daisy Kenyon. One was an actress that Preminger had directed before in a great success, the strikingly beautiful Jean Tierney, who had been in Laura. The other name that came up was Jennifer Jones. But Preminger decided he wanted, surprisingly, Joan Crawford. Now, Joan Crawford was under contract for Warner's, and Fox had to negotiate to get her and bring her to the Fox lot. She was thrilled to be doing the picture. Now, this movie represents another phase in Joan Crawford's extraordinary career. Joan Crawford had been born in San Antonio, Texas, and she was a woman of great grit and tremendous drive and ambition, and it showed frequently in her movie roles. By the 20s, during the days of silence, she had gotten to Hollywood, and Joan Crawford was a success. She represented for many in silent cinema the ideal flapper. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote about her as a woman who personified the flapper with her energy, her glamour, and a certain kind of cynicism. In the 1930s, with the arrival of sound, Joan Crawford made the great transition, and she became one of MGM's great stars of the Depression era. She had a number of hits. You can see her in Grand Hotel, that all-star film with Garbo, Wallace Beery, the Barrymore brothers. And Joan Crawford plays a stenographer, struggling to make ends meet and to find her way in the world. She also appeared during this period in a version of Somerset Maugham's Rain. And it was a performance that wasn't taken seriously at first, but in later years was reappraised. She also did, during this era, The Women, in which it was an all-star female cast, and Crawford really stands out in that movie. And she did a film that I like in the early 40s, a film called A Woman's Face. And it's about a woman who has been physically and psychologically scarred because of a fire, an accident. She undergoes reconstructive surgery on her face. And then the movie follows her as she has to redeem herself. I think it's a striking performance. These were some of the films that really had an impact with audiences. But in 1938, there was an article that appeared that named certain stars who were considered to be box office poison. Greta Garbo was on the list, Mae West, Marlene Dietrich, and Joan Crawford. Crawford was sort of shaken by that. And she was also shaken because the films that came her way eventually in the early 40s just weren't up to snuff. They weren't making money, and she knew she could see her career collapse. She ended up leaving MGM, and she signed a contract with Warner Brothers. At Warner Brothers, Bette Davis was the queen of the lot. And Joan Crawford knew that she was going to have to be very, very selective in the role that she would do first at Warner's. The movie, the big role that she did, was perfect for her. It was the movie Mildred Pierce. Once again, Joan Crawford was playing a hard-working woman, financially trying to support herself after the collapse of her marriage and her 2 daughters. It was a strong, vivid performance. Joan Crawford won the Academy Award for her work. Now she was in the second phase of her great career. And in the late 40s, after the Second World War, during this phase, Joan Crawford made such movies as Flamingo Road, Humoresque, and Daisy Kenyon. Now, Daisy Kenyon is a woman's picture, a movie made with the female audience in mind, with a woman at the center of the film. The woman's picture was very popular. Joan Crawford had a huge female following. This does not mean that men did not also enjoy these films, but they were very important for the female stars. Joan Crawford in this film, this woman's picture, she is confronted with a familiar trope from that time. There are 2 men vying for her, and she has to decide which one she really wants to be with. One is brash and rather outspoken and far more sexual, and this is played by Dana Andrews, who's surprisingly more energetic here than we usually think of him as being. It's a fine performance. The other is a man, a veteran who's returned from the war, a more sensitive man, played by Henry Fonda. It's been said that with these 2 different types of men that a woman has to choose from in the woman's film, that for the audience, the 2 men together, their traits combined, actually compose the ideal kind of man in the mass female imagination. Joan Crawford has to choose, and you'll watch and see what she has to deal with. The dialogue is often quite sophisticated, and Preminger handles the direction quite well. There are also some things that come up in this film that we wouldn't expect, that Hollywood was not really dealing with. One, you're going to see a reference to the internment camps the Japanese Americans were put in during the Second World War. It doesn't explore it, but it's there in the movie and it stands out. The other thing that happens in this film is really the effects of the war itself on the Henry Fonda character. He's lost his wife and he's been damaged emotionally by the war. We watch to see what Crawford will do. Now, interesting enough, when the movie was released, it did well. Joan Crawford received good reviews. People didn't seem to take it very seriously. It was a nice piece of entertainment. But in later years, it's been reappraised, and it's become something of a cult film. Now, as a sidebar to all of this, it's interesting to have these 2 highly fiery personalities, Otto Preminger and Joan Crawford, working together. Otto Preminger was notorious for being very, very difficult for actors. He was quite demanding. He didn't care how big the star was. Joan Crawford acquired years later, because of Mommy Dearest, a reputation of being a very difficult woman to work with as well. The truth about Joan Crawford is that most of her directors said she was fine. They didn't have a problem with her. Even Bette Davis said that when they worked together, Joan Crawford was the ultimate professional. She was on time, she knew her lines. Preminger had no problems with Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford had no problems with Otto Preminger. In fact, Otto Preminger, years later, said that he couldn't remember anything about this movie except Joan Crawford. And he also remembered that Joan Crawford at one point had visited his home, and she must have noted that his patio furniture was slightly worn. Before he knew it, Joan Crawford had sent to him an exclusive new set of patio furniture so he could relax in style. Now you're going to see this film on Nitrate, and I'm sure it's going to be a visual feast. So here, without further ado, is Joan Crawford and Otto Preminger's Daisy Kenyon.